And good morning to you. It's 10 a.m. in Manchester for Sunday, the 26th of March 2017. I hope you're well. It's a glorious morning here. A wonderful morning right across the country, it seems. And that is why we're a bit early today. Hope you don't mind that. Thought with the weather going to be great today. Thought we might do a show, do a proper show, do it properly, but do it a bit earlier to enjoy some of the sunshine. That's the plan. I can't do that Liam Gallagher sunshine thing. Sunshine. But it's beautiful out there. It really is. I've been up since 6. The clocks went forward, so we're into British summertime now, and it feels like summer. This is your Sunday View, broadcasting live on davidicke.com, Fab Radio 2 and TuneIn Radio. My name is Richie Allen. Good morning to you. Let's get this show on the road.
For critical information ignored by the mainstream media, log on to davidicke.com/headlines now.
Broadcasting live from the great city of Manchester, England. This is the Richie Allen Show on davidicke.com.
Yes, and I am aware, because of the difficulty in reaching numbers or vast numbers of people through Facebook, that many of our regular listeners may not be with us at this juncture, especially with the clocks going forward. But that's okay. The podcast, of course, will be on around about the time that we normally go live anyway. So if you have gotten out of bed to join me live today, a very good morning to you. I hope you're well and that you're in fine fettle. David is in Iceland, and as I speak with you, just like last week when he was in Slovenia, he's in Iceland today and he's on stage there. Wonderful time to be him. I think the Worldwide Wake Up crew, they're in Iceland today for the 11-hour talk. They're off then next week to Zagreb in Croatia. Wonderful stuff. Check out theworldwidewakeup.com. Check out davidicke.com as well. So a lot going on. Doing it this early has been problematic for me, but I managed to swing it. There were a number of interviews on breakfast radio and television that I wanted to bring you, and I've managed to do it. I'm very proud of myself. Self-praise is no praise. Stop giving yourself flowers, son. But if I could have done with a producer and an editor ever, I could have done with one today. But anyway, we managed. There is a lot going on. As usual, I'm going to look at the front pages of the Sunday newspapers in Old Blighty. We'll look at the tabloids and the broadsheet newspapers and tell you what they are saying. There's some really interesting stuff in the papers today, particularly an article by Peter Hitchens in the Sunday Mail, which I'm going to bring you shortly. Fascinating article. You know, sometimes, dear listener, when an establishment journalist nearly gets it, when they're tantalizingly close to understanding the conspiracy, well, fascinating article, Peter Hitchens in the Sunday Mail. You may already have read it. So the Sunday Times then, a lot of the papers, the Sunday papers today, focusing on two issues, the European Union, but first and foremost, the attack in London at Westminster Bridge on Wednesday. So the Sunday Times, two stories dominating their front page. The first one, Masood was lone wolf, say police. And the other one, EU migrants keep benefits after Brexit. That's the Sunday Times. Now, police believe that the Westminster attacker, Khalid Masood, was a lone wolf. That's the gist of the story. He was a lone wolf. This terrible buzzword, this terrible cliche. He was a lone wolf whose murderous plot was not orchestrated by ISIS in Syria. Scotland Yard detectives and MI5 are still looking at whether he might have received encouragement or assistance from people he knew in the UK, but they don't believe he was part of an Islamist cell similar to the cell that carried out the Paris and Brussels attacks. He acted alone, says the police, or say the police. There was nothing dramatic about this being a global plan or directed from overseas. And in fact, they're comparing the attack to the one that killed Fusilier Lee Rigby. So more on that on this programme shortly. All right. Now, also in the Times, that other headline I gave you there, the EU migrants keep benefits after Brexit. Ministers are considering, we are told, whether to allow European Union migrants who are already in the UK, when Theresa May triggers Article 50 on Wednesday, they're considering whether to allow them to continue to receive child benefits to send to families back home. Now, the Sunday Times said ministers on the Cabinet's Brexit Committee had been sent a document by the Department for Exiting the European Union recommending, that's David Davis's department, recommending that 3 million EU migrants in the UK keep their welfare rights when Article 50 is triggered on Wednesday. So only those arriving after Wednesday would not have those benefits. Okay? Ministers are saying that any attempt to withdraw those benefits from those already here would risk Brussels taking tit-for-tat action to restrict health and pension rights of British expats in the EU. Now, I've been saying from day one that this is nonsense. It's a non-issue. Workers here from EU countries paying national insurance, paying tax, paying council tax, they should have the same benefits as any UK citizen, right? Where's the issue? This is about the future control of borders. Surely nobody would have any problem with that. The whole point of Article 50, in theory, is that you trigger it and then you take complete control back of what you're going to do with your borders, with the amount of employment seeking even migrants you take in on an annual basis. Those already here with national insurance numbers, whom are paying their way. You just leave them alone, right? Non-issue. By the way, the BBC interviewed the European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker. Now, this is interesting. This is the BBC speaking with Juncker. I know I do things arseways. This is very un-mainstream media, this programme, of course. Normally you'd start with the attack on Wednesday, but we're going to come to the attack on Wednesday. But this is really interesting. The European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker was speaking to the BBC yesterday. The presenter is a woman called Katja Adler. Here's how some of that went.
You obviously, President of the European Commission, are a great believer in the European Union. But when Theresa May is not there on Saturday, what will be in your mind as the way to stop others following suit, other member states walking out the door? Will you try and use the negotiations around Brexit to put others off?
Even if the British PM is not there, I will have the British people in my heart. Because Britain belongs to Europe in a way or another, but Britain is part of Europe. So Brexit or not Brexit, we should not forget that the European continent has a duty when it comes to Britain, because without Churchill and without the resilience of the British people, we wouldn't be there where we are now. So I'm everything but in an hostile mood when it comes to Britain, but I don't want others to take the same avenue, because let's suppose for 1 second that others would leave. 2, 3, 4, 5, that would be the end.
How do you balance that in Brexit negotiations? On the one hand, wanting to keep the UK close, as you said, but on the other, wanting to ensure that others are put off leaving. I mean, could those negotiations not turn nasty?
When it comes to negotiations, the European Union and the Commission, having been tasked with this negotiation, will negotiate in a friendly way, in a firm way, and we are not naive.
We are not naive, said Juncker. Now, left to its own devices, without interference, the European Union would collapse, wouldn't it? Because without the toxic interference of the Troika, the International Monetary Fund, the European Central Bank, and the EU, and all the criminality, the likes of Greece and France and Spain and Italy and the Republic of Ireland would come out. I've no doubt they would come out. I really do believe that. That was Juncker. We're going to be talking more about this, obviously, on the Richie Allen Show in the coming days, as Article 50 is triggered on Wednesday. There was a massive march yesterday, apparently, in London, pro-Remainers, those who want to remain in the European Union. Apparently 100,000 people took to the streets demanding that they get their way, that there's, I think a second referendum was discussed. They talked about hard Brexit, screwing the country up, demanding that the UK remains a part of the single market and all of that nonsense. How anti-democratic is that? 52% of the public, those who voted to leave the European Union. Go and boil your arse. Get over it. But of course, it's not as simple as that. There's going to be a lot happen. I told you this last week. I'll tell you this ongoing. They are not going to allow the UK leave the European Union without a monumental fight. Now, the Sunday Telegraph's front page headline is this: UKIP civil war after Carswell quits party. Carswell was UKIP's only MP. You might remember he defected from the Conservative Party in 2014. Because of that, there was a by-election. He won that with a majority of about 3,000 and change, I think. And he's quit UKIP. Former leader Nigel Farage had recently called on Carswell to quit, saying that he was working against UKIP. The current party leader, Paul Nuttall, said Carswell was committed to Brexit, but he was never a comfortable UKIPper. Some people are now calling from within UKIP for the MP to call a by-election, but he's not having any of that, and he did speak briefly with the BBC.
For me, getting out of the European Union is so important. I care so passionately about it. I was prepared to change parties, trigger by-elections. It's happening in 3 days' time. It's wonderful.
What is going to happen now? Because you say that you are going to sit as an independent MP without triggering a by-election. Yep. Now, you can do that. Technically, you can do that. But morally, should you be doing that?
Well, if I was switching party, I would, without question, call a by-election. I know that because I was the first MP in, I think, 26 years to do that. No one makes you, but I felt when I was a Conservative and wanted to join UKIP, I felt a moral obligation, a democratic obligation to do that. But I'm not switching parties now. I'm demonstrably not changing. I'm not crossing the floor. I'm going to still sit in opposition. I'm going to be holding the government to account. If you entered a world in which you would automatically have a by-election if you left a party, far from actually empowering constituents, that would actually strengthen party bosses. So I think this is entirely right, entirely consistent with the principles of direct democracy.
Carswell. Now, on the front page of the Sunday Telegraph, on the same front page as the EU story, Rudd is the headline. Rudd, social media firms must do more to stop terror. Rudd, of course, is Amber Rudd. She's the UK Home Secretary, responsible, of course, for policing, responsible for the safety of UK citizens and much more besides. Amber Rudd. Social media firms must do more to stop terror. This is massive. A short time ago, she spoke with Andrew Marr on the BBC's Marr programme, their Sunday morning flagship breakfast chat, political chat show, I should say. This is fascinating stuff. This is Amber Rudd speaking about social media firms and taking on terrorists online. This is hot off the press, as they say. Have a listen.
In your view, is this a lone attacker or was there a wider plot?
Well, good morning, Andrew. What we're hearing from the police is that they believe it's a lone attacker, but it's an ongoing investigation. They're still collecting evidence about his journey, the people he's spoken to, the contacts he made, so we can't be completely conclusive about that yet. But as we find out more from the investigation, I think that's what it'll confirm.
Now, what we do know is that there was a WhatsApp contact just before he launched the attack. And if we knew what that contact was, what he said and to whom, we'd know a lot more. But as I understand it, I use WhatsApp. It's encrypted at both ends. And if you tap on the WhatsApp system, it tells you that. So you know that the security services, you know the Home Office is never going to see what you do. I can show you what it says here. Messages you send to this chat and calls are now secured with end-to-end encryption. Tap for more info, and if you tap, it tells you you will be completely safe. Nobody will ever see. And that is what a lot of people think terrorists and others are using. Can I put it to you that situation is now completely unacceptable?
That is my view. It is completely unacceptable. There should be no place for terrorists to hide. We need to make sure that organisations like WhatsApp, and there are plenty of others like that, don't provide a secret place for terrorists to communicate with each other. It used to be that people would steam open envelopes or just listen in on phones when they wanted to find out what people were doing legally through warrantry. But on this situation, we need to make sure that our intelligence services have the ability to get into situations like encrypted WhatsApp.
So this is exactly the same argument that's going on between Apple and the FBI in Washington, where Tim Cook of Apple has so far said that they're not going to allow the American authorities to open a back door into their products. And yet if they don't do that, then this end-to-end encryption continues. So do you think that the British government and the American government have to take on the big internet companies and force them to open up their devices?
But if I was talking to Tim Cook, I would say to him, this is something completely different. We're not saying open up, we don't want to go into the cloud, we don't want to do all sorts of things like that, but we do want them to recognise that they have a responsibility to engage with government, to engage with law enforcement agencies when there is a terrorist situation. We would do it all through the carefully thought through, legally covered arrangements, but they cannot get away with saying we are a different situation. They are not.
Yeah, no, she didn't answer his question, did she? He pointedly asked her, could they be compelled? Could they be forced to open their devices to the government and to the agencies of the government? He asked her again, to his credit, did Mar. This is what she said when he asked her a second time.
I do agree that we have to have a situation where we can have our security services get into the terrorist communications. That's absolutely the case. So, of course, I will have those conversations and we will see where they go. Because
this is a big selling point for them. You know, they advertise this as a positive virtue of their systems. If they're going to change, they're not going to want to change. You're going to have to make them change. But
I think I need to set it out clearly for them. I'm not saying that I want to get into your WhatsApp, Andrew. What I'm saying,
you're very welcome.
What I'm saying is that where there are situations where there are ongoing investigations with terrorists. I mean, these people have families, have children as well. They should be on our side, and I'm going to try and win that argument.
What they want to do is they want to draft legislation, and they want it to be extremely vague about legislation that gives them the authority to go after anybody's online activity, whether it be on WhatsApp, which most people use through their phone, whether it be through somebody's tablet or laptop. That's why she's incredibly vague and wouldn't answer the question put to her twice. Do you think that they should be compelled to, forced to, share the keys and the back doors and the passwords of their technology with you, the government, in order to protect us so that terrorists can't do what terrorists do? And I'm not going to labour a point that I've made many times on this programme, because I think you agree with it. Ultimately, they refuse to do two things. Well, one thing really, and that is define extremism. Now, Baroness Saida Warsi also spoke to Andrew Marr today about what constitutes an extremist. I'll share that interview with you a little bit later in this programme. But they don't want to do that. They want it to be extremely vague. So then anybody, we talked about this last week, when certain companies went to Google and said, we don't want our ads appearing alongside certain producers, certain content producers on YouTube because it makes us look bad and it's monetizing them. And I said to you last week, and I meant it, and I've been saying this for a long time, ultimately where Google is going, and Google owns YouTube, is the demonetization of any content creator that doesn't suit the narrative, doesn't suit the drama that I talked about last week. You know, doesn't suit the explanation of everyday events. So anybody challenging that can be labelled an extremist. This is why they won't define extremism, and this is why Rudd, doing the politician thing, skirts around giving an honest answer to the question, do you want to compel the technology companies to give you access to everything? Of course they do. And that's what's coming down the line. That was Andrew Marr and Home Secretary Amber Rudd a short time ago. Right? The Sunday Express. The front page of the Sunday Express. I'm not the hero, he is the headline. I'm not the hero, he is. Foreign Office Minister Tobias Ellwood has insisted he isn't a hero after he tried to save the life of PC Keith Palmer in Westminster. I'm not going to tell you any more about that because it's not that relevant today. Tobias Elwood, who gave mouth to mouth and tried to resuscitate Palmer. I'm not the hero he is, he says, front page of the Express. The Sunday Mail has some good stories within, but its front page is diabolical. Williams helicopter split second from lethal drone crash, screams the headline. Williams helicopter split second from lethal drone crash. You can probably guess. The future King of England, Prince William, he co-pilots an air ambulance, and last summer a drone nearly caused the helicopter to come to grief. Who gives a shite? He co-pilots an air ambulance when he's not partying and holidaying on your money, by the way. Now, there is some good stuff in the Mail. I did mention at the top of the programme a good article by Peter Hitchens, which I'll come to in a minute. Now, the Sunday Observer at 21 minutes past the hour, 21 minutes past 10. Sunday Observer, Mosul assault halted as fury grows over civilian deaths. Mosul assault halted as fury grows over civilian deaths. I'll read you first couple of paragraphs of that. This is in the Sunday Observer. Iraqi military leaders have halted their push to recapture western Mosul from Islamic State as international outrage grew over the civilian toll from airstrikes that killed at least 150 people in a single district of the city. The attack on the Mosul Jadida neighbourhood is thought to have been one of the deadliest bombing raids for civilians since the US invasion of Iraq in 2003. Rescuers were still pulling bodies from the rubble yesterday, more than a week after the bombs landed, when the US-led coalition confirmed that its aircraft had targeted ISIS fighters in the area. They carried out the attack on St. Patrick's Day at the request of the Iraqi security forces and have now launched a formal investigation into reports of civilian casualties. And that's according to the coalition. British planes were among those operating in western Mosul. Asked if they could have been involved in the strikes, a UK military spokesman said that they couldn't rule out the possibility of British involvement, saying we are aware of reports of civilian casualties and we will support the coalition investigation. We can trust them, right? I think we can trust them to investigate themselves. No problem there. Now, Gerald Celente, the trends research publisher, great guy and great friend of ours, was on this programme last Thursday, and speaking about the attacks in Westminster on Wednesday, Celente made this rather salient and pretty brilliant point.
How about the 230 civilians that was slaughtered last night by United States airstrikes over Mosul? They don't count. How about the 40 Syrians that were bombed away by the USA last week and another 30 this week? They don't count. But one madman kills 4 people. We got to increase that war against ISIS, I tells you. You have the Trends Journal. You see the cover of it.
Yeah.
Crusades 2000. That's all this is. No one wants to see or say, how did this radicalism been created? It's their religion. Oh, yeah, maybe it is. It couldn't be because the United States and its coalition of the killing slaughtered over 1 million Iraqis on a war based on lies.
Yeah, not to mention Libya, as he went on to say to his credit, and Afghanistan, and the use of drones inside Pakistan, the Afghan-Pakistan border. Yes, we're talking millions of people. But they're not human, those people. They're brown-skinned, dirty rats, aren't they? They're dirty Islamists because they've been dehumanised by the media. And worst of all, they've been dehumanised by the alternative media, the so-called alternative media, putting out videos talking about the religion even of peace, screaming about it, categorising and dehumanising over 1 billion people. So people look at them and they see poor, dirty, brown-skinned people who look different, who speak a different language, and they see them as scum, basically. That's why it doesn't matter. that 230 people were killed in a house or in a building. Doesn't matter. The successful dehumanization of people from that part of the world is you could dedicate programs to it. Doesn't matter that the police are certain that the guy wasn't connected with the so-called Islamic State. So I'm going to take a break. When I come back, we're going to have a look at that article in the Sunday Mail by Peter Hitchens, which is absolutely fascinating. You're with Sunday View in association with davidicke.com/headlines. My name is Richie Allen. It's 25 minutes past the hour. Here's a quick break. Don't go anywhere. Back with the Peter Hitchens article after these.
Have you lost access to important data from a computer hard drive, mobile phone, or other storage device? Maybe you have a broken hard drive containing years of information, or a smartphone that no longer works from which you'd like the pictures, movies, and chats recovered. If you would like to recover data from any type of digital device, including desktop and laptop computers, external hard drives, cameras, smartphones, NAS, and RAID servers, then contact Data Clinic today at dataclinic.co.uk now.
Virtually every transaction that involves a child is valuable to somebody.
We intend to show everyone the real reason children are being removed at an alarming rate.
No, this is awful.
The baby's not been seen by the doctor or nothing.
They are psychopathic. They have got the legal right to kill children now, because that's what they do.
Traffic 2, available now at premiumlonpictures.co.uk.
Looking to arrange a mortgage? Confused by all the deals available? Let Manchester Mortgages do the work for you. Take advantage of our free mortgage review offer throughout February and March and see if we can save you money. We are whole of market brokers with access to hundreds of mortgage schemes across the UK. Call us on 0161 706 0242 or go to manchestermortgages.co.uk. Your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on your mortgage. Manchester Mortgages are a trading style of Mortgages for You North West Limited, who are authorised and regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority.
Do not invest another pound of your money until you've heard this message. Jim Rickards here, best-selling author of Currency Wars and The Death of Money. But today I'm urging you to claim a free copy of my new best-selling book. Visit newcaseforgold.co.uk for full details. Inside, I reveal why gold could soar to $10,000 an ounce and how to make sure you own enough of the right type of gold. To get your copy dispatched today, go to newcaseforgold.co.uk now. This book will change everything you think you know about investing in gold. Visit newcaseforgold.co.uk today.
There's a place high in the mountains of Spain, a sanctuary where souls gather from all around the globe to learn about themselves and experience powerful changes in the way we see our world. They become awakened to their gifts and their power to heal others. Become part of this ever-growing worldwide family of unique, pure energy healing practitioners. Discover how amazing you truly are. Go to www.markbayerski.com. It could just change your life forever.
Welcome back to Sunday View live, 28 minutes past 10 this Sunday morning. It might not, of course I should say past the hour, because I know there are listeners right now listening in Australia and in parts of the world in Asia and places like that. So yeah, but here in the UK it's 28 and a half minutes past the hour. Great to be with you. I got some fascinating shows lined up for you this coming week on the Richie Allen Show in association with davidicke.com. Do stay in touch with our new website, richieallen.co.uk, which is online and has been for a couple of weeks, but we're developing it all the time. Sue tweets that she's encouraged at work to take prevent training. Prevent is all about extremism. This is vocal or active opposition to apparently fundamental British values. Thank you, Sue. Hubertes tweets between 250 and 370 civilians killed by US-led airstrikes in 7 days of fighting. That's from Air Wars, who monitor coalition air bombing campaigns. Thanks, Hubertes. Base Ninja tweets, smart bombs, so smart they can determine a barn from several story building and have kill zones of 300 feet. Safe as houses, says Base Ninja. They're obviously not, of course. Good morning to La Antenna. Good morning to Gail and to Karen Kelly and to Fergie as well. Fergie is in Iceland, waiting for David Icke to start. He's very excited about it. Fergie, I don't blame you. It's going to be a fascinating day for you and for everybody else there as well. Marvellous stuff. Right, so Peter Hitchens then, writing in today's Sunday Mail. The headline of the article is, Peter Hitchens, there's one thing that may stop these terror attacks, but no one wants to know. And I'm going to read you a little bit of it. He writes, does Hitchens, the more we boast about how calm, tough and united we are, the more we prove it is not so. The official response to Wednesday's events looked like panic and overreaction to me. Just as in the days after Diana died, we have become a nation of unreasoning weepers, laying flowers, lowering flags and lighting candles, and congratulating ourselves on how wonderful we are, while not thinking at all. The only thing missing so far is the Blair creature trying to hijack other people's tears. Thank heaven for small mercies. He continues, this is Peter Hitchens. I suspect there is a large minority, perhaps a majority, gritting its teeth and stifling dissent for fear that a temporary dictatorship of grief will punish them for failing to show the required emotions. Maybe it's just me. Anyway, here goes. What should we do? Well, it might be wise to tell the truth. First, we have absolutely no evidence that the Westminster murders originated with Islamic State. They claim responsibility for every horror, but on this occasion, they were as wrong about the name of the culprit as Channel 4 News. Hitchens continues. Surely, if they'd ordered it, they would have known who had done it. As I have pointed out many times before, many of these actions are committed by criminal misfits with long histories of theft, petty violence and drug abuse. The Nice killer, a drunkard and drug abuser who never went near a mosque, was one such. The Berlin truck driver was an arsonist, thief and bar brawler. The Westminster killer was another low-life jailbird who had been in prison 3 times for, among other things, stabbing a man in the face. He had several other convictions, but Scotland Yard inexplicably refuses to tell me what they were. That's interesting, isn't it? Scotland Yard won't tell him about the other convictions. Hitchens writes and continues, a former school friend says he began to go downhill after he started smoking cannabis in his teens. Even if he gave up later, cannabis is linked to long-term lingering mental illness. Now it isn't. You and I don't believe that. We'll leave that to one side, dear listener. Park that to one side. Hitchens continues, listen. He is also said by some who knew him to have been a bodybuilder, so he may have been taking steroids. These powerful mood-influencing drugs were also used by Anders Breivik, by the rampage killer Raoul Moat, and the Orlando mass killer Omar Mateen. I doubt we'll ever know, since the authorities, obsessed with finding links to a bearded Supremo in an eastern cave, are almost totally uninterested in the amazingly strong correlation between mind-altering drugs and crazed violence, and so don't find out. That was Peter Hitchens in the Sunday Mail. Tantalisingly close to the truth, eh? He's nearly there, Hitchens. He's so close he can taste it. I put it to you, and I know you know this, back to front, top to bottom, that these guys are groomed by MI5, the CIA, Mossad and the rest of them through these mind-bending drugs. Leave cannabis out of it. Hitchens has had this bee up his arse about cannabis going back years. Leave cannabis out of it. But the other mind-bending drugs, he's right. Because these drugs make it easy to manipulate them. They're more susceptible to things like voice-to-skull technology. And we're told that when guys like Masood are in prison, they're radicalised. Maybe they're not. Maybe in prison they are targeted. because of their prior use of these drugs, because of their violent behaviour, they can be targeted, they can be manipulated into thinking things, doing certain things. I'm certain of it. And I've no proof, just a lot of circumstantial evidence. That evidence laid out by Hitchens in his brilliant article. All these guys are on mind-bending drugs. What's the guy who's supposed to have shot up the cinema? There's so much of this nonsense that I forget names. Remind me, the guy that's supposed to have shot up the cinema in America. We saw him at his arraignment. He looked like he was stoned out of his bloody mind. And this guy, Khalid Masood, was another patsy, in my opinion. He did it. He drove onto Westminster Bridge and he did it, but I believe he was under the control of the spooks. And as for the grief culture, Hitchens is absolutely right. Let me remind you what he said in 4 lines. He said, just as in the days after Diana died, we've become a nation of unreasoning weepers, laying flowers, lowering flags, lighting candles, and congratulating ourselves on how wonderful we are while not thinking at all. Not thinking at all. And I said this last week. I put a YouTube video on there. We're consumers of a 24-hour soap opera drama. We're hooked into it. Produced by the media. There's no questioning of it. Madness. 24 minutes to the top of the hour. 24 minutes to 11 as I chat with you. This is cutting edge stuff. And amazing that Hitchens is onto that. But he's not taking the next step. Maybe these guys are being controlled. Maybe they are being handled and put up to it. What the world of the media and the establishment wants us to believe is that these guys can just be normal guys, maybe with a few problems, a few social problems, and they can be radicalised on the internet. People sending them messages on the internet can turn them into lunatic jihadists. How simple, how wonderful, how neat. It's nonsense. It's nonsense. Good morning to Mark Bierski, who's listening in Mijas Pueblo. Good morning, Mark. Nice to know you're listening, mate. It is a beautiful Sunday here. The weather is absolutely fantastic. It's beautiful here. So let's talk about that then. This radicalisation. The Sunday Mirror. The Sunday Mirror. Their headline on the front page is Secret Message Ordered Attack on Westminster. How wonderful. ISIS fanatics used the secretive messaging site Telegram to call for a lone wolf attack on Parliament, weeks before Khalid Masood struck. A Sunday Mirror probe has uncovered chilling messages in which jihadi masterminds urged terrorists to mount atrocities in the UK. They shared an image of an IS fighter dressed like an executioner, Jihadi John, wielding a sword in front of Big Ben. The illustration was headlined "Fight Them," and it showed a fireball and a tattered Union flag flying from a pole. Just weeks later, Masood, 52, ploughed his car into scores of innocent bystanders, killing 3 and injuring 50. Dear listener, they want us to believe that Khalid Masood saw the image. He saw the image of an ISIS fighter standing in front of Big Ben with a tattered flag, and he went, fuck, give me a car. Where's there a car? I'm going to kill people. Yeah, that's how it went down. That's how it went down. Eh? Madness. So the Sunday Mirror goes on to talk about WhatsApp, formed by Pavel Durov, and how, as we heard earlier on, Amber Rudd speaking with Andrew Marr, how WhatsApp commands end-to-end encryption and security forces are unable to hack the service. Therefore, they were unable to see the message sent out by ISIS, and they were unable to see the usage of that message in those who consumed it. What a load of utter bollocks. But that's what they want you to believe. It's what they want you to believe. Now, Sky News spoke to experts. By the way, apparently this WhatsApp was used to exchange messages after Berlin and the Nice terror attack as well. How convenient. Sky News spoke to so-called experts about how ISIS used social media. Here's Charlie Winter. Charlie Winter is a counter-extremism and security analyst. Shall we do that again? Charlie Winter. Right, so yeah, Sky News has spoken to a couple of guys. Counter-extremism and security analyst Charlie Winter is one of those. Listen.
For Islamic State, propaganda is everything. If you look at its actions through the lens of propaganda, it all begins to make sense. Their most atrocious acts, their most counterintuitive operations, they all suddenly begin to fall into place. It's all about ideology, perpetuating that ideology. And in that sense, propaganda and terrorism are one and the same thing for the Islamic State.
In 2015, during February, IS put out 892 pieces of propaganda, photos, videos, written reports and audio. The corresponding month this year, though, IS put out only 570 pieces online, a drop of more than a third. And the type of content has changed. In 2015, IS didn't focus on beheadings or jihad. 53% of their output was dedicated to depicting IS as a utopia. Only 39% was about war. This year, those swapped. As coalition forces moved in, 80% of IS's output was about jihad and only 14% about utopia.
Yeah, and all those jihadi beheading videos, far from disturbing and disgusting young men, which they would do, because any young man, I saw a video many years ago, it would have been 2004, 2005, and I saw a video of, it might have been Daniel Pearl, it might have been somebody else. And it was the first such time that I'd ever seen anything like that. A man being held on the ground while another man basically sawed his head off. And it made me sick to my stomach. I don't think I actually became violently ill. Physically ill. You might be eating your breakfast. But I was nauseous and it stayed with me for days. I never saw anything like it. And we're meant to believe that young disenfranchised men are looking at imagery like that and they are going, right, yeah, that's it. That's for me. No. Some young men, under the influence of mind-bending drugs and being handled by the agents of the security services in this country and others, are maybe, through, again, mind control techniques, maybe are being influenced by this material. But ordinary blokes that are just a bit pissed off with the world and pissed off with themselves being influenced by this, no, it's not happening. Ross Frennett is a co-founder of Moonshot CVE. Now, he talks about how to deal with it. This is interesting, this on the foot of what Amber Rudd was saying about wanting to have the keys to the back door of the apps like WhatsApp and applications and stuff. This is Ross Frennett, co-founder of Moonshot CVE.
What needs to be done to a certain extent to counter ISIS and Daesh is to mimic their tactics, to actually identify individuals that are vulnerable and engage in one-to-one conversations with those individuals. It's hard work, but with modern technology it can be done. And the only way we're ever going to really turn the tide on this is if we start to do that kind of hard work in the digital space in the exact same way the extremists are doing it.
In the exact same way. So identify people online and get to them before the extremists do. It's all very Orwellian, that, isn't it? It's pretty much what Rudd and Marr were talking about. Rudd, of course, won't answer the question about whether the creators and the owners of the technology involved, whether they should be compelled to hand over their secrets, their codes, their technology to governments and to the intelligence agencies. But of course, that's exactly what they want. This is the big story today, this in the European Union. Baroness Saida Warsi was also on with Andrew Marr. She's a Muslim. She was talking with Marr today about what it is that constitutes an extremist. Here's some of that. This is interesting stuff.
What actually makes a violent jihadi? What makes a terrorist? And there is so much expert evidence out there, indeed, from our own intelligence services, internal documentation, Home Affairs Select Committee, academics, researchers, people who've studied deeply the lives of these terrorists, who say that there can be anything between 15 to about 28 different reasons, different telltale signs. And my argument has consistently been that the government has obsessively focused on one, which we refer to as Islamist ideology. Ideology is important, but it is but one factor.
And this is another example of somebody who was not born a Muslim and converts, in this case, relatively late in life and is radicalised in prison. If we had a different way of searching for these people, what would it look like?
Well, I think, first of all, it's important to know that it's difficult to search for these people. I think there has in the past, unfortunately, been a narrative which says that somehow people, for example, Muslim communities, know who these people are amongst themselves, that somehow not only do they know them, but they're condoning them or maybe even sheltering them. And I think what we've seen as in the terrorist attack from last week is that it's incredibly difficult. This is a young man who was born in a Christian home, born in a fairly comfortable home, seemed to be living a fairly good lifestyle. Was popular, then got involved in criminality, didn't convert to Islam until later on in life. So he was a violent Christian long before he was a violent Muslim. And I'm not sure that any of the people who were growing up with him, indeed his own family, would have known that he would have gone on to commit such an extreme act. And I think therefore it's important for us to go back to what I keep saying is important, evidence-based policy making.
He was handled, wasn't he? The more you learn about Khalid Masood, I know I'm only repeating what I said earlier on, but it bears repeating. He was handled by somebody. There's no doubt about that. He wasn't groomed and radicalised by Islamic State, which of course is... Islamic State is nothing more than a proxy army fighting to destroy the Middle East on behalf of the elite, on behalf of the Rothschild Zionist banking cartel. That's who they are. So they're not radicalising guys like this. We need guys like this. Well, the elite, the system needs guys like this to do things like we saw on Wednesday, to reinforce the narrative. And that's what happens. And I believe they groom these guys. Could be years. Trigger words are used, imagery is used as part of a mind-bending, mind-control thing. And on Wednesday, he was triggered at some stage, maybe even on Tuesday. Again, I'll be totally honest. I don't have definitive proof of that. It's the circumstantial evidence. Here's a little bit more from Warsi and Mar on extremism.
So why is it, Saida, though, that you get these damaged, violent, often drug-taking young men, and they convert again and again to Islam before they commit acts? They don't convert to evangelical Christianity or Hinduism. They choose Islam. Why do you think that is?
Although there are people around the world who are evangelical Christians and commit violent acts, and extremist Hindus, indeed Buddhists, who commit extremist acts, people always want to find a cause. Nobody is going to say, I am an extremist or a terrorist, I just want to commit violent acts because that's the kind of violent man I am, which clearly Khalid Masood was. They want to try and find an air of respectability, a justification for it. Indeed, if you go back to the GBH that he was convicted of in early life, there's some suggestion that the argument that he presented to court at that time was that he had been racially abused. So his violent act was based upon his racial identity. Yeah. So people will always find a grievance.
Yeah, so that was Mar and the Baroness Saida Warsi. As I'm chatting with you, the BBC are reporting, in fact, an hour ago, the New York Times reported, and the New York Daily News are on this as well. They're saying that a shooter opened fire at a nightclub in Cincinnati, Ohio, at around 2:30 a.m. local time there, killing at least one person and wounding a dozen more. The assault has been described as a shooting spree by the cops. The Assistant Police Chief Paul Newdigate said most of the clubbers fled and left behind a very chaotic crime scene. Several victims have life-threatening injuries. It's unclear if the person responsible has been apprehended. That's coming out of New York now. I don't know if the Ohio newspapers are saying anything. I've just got the New York CNN are reporting on it as well. Let's see what CNN are saying. Pretty much the same thing, is that one person was killed and 14 injured when gunfire broke out at a nightclub in Cincinnati. The police sergeant, Eric Franz, has told CNN that several people are undergoing surgery, which isn't nice. The shooting occurred at something called the Cameo nightclub just after 1 a.m. Eastern time, which would be about 6 o'clock in the morning here as our clocks went forward at that time. While the motive is unclear, he said, did Sergeant Eric Franz, there isn't any reason to suspect terrorism. There isn't any reason to suspect terrorism. And of course, this is one of the things that's crept in to this drama, this 24-hour soap opera that we are living witnesses to in the media. If somebody falls off a sidewalk or a footpath now and bangs their head, it seems somebody has to say, we're either not ruling out terrorism or, as of yet, there's no reason to suspect terrorism. Well, why fucking say it then? Could be a gangster-related thing, couldn't it? It could be a gang-related shooting in a nightclub. Why mention terrorism then? Why not say we've no idea what happened or why somebody opened a gun? We're investigating it, and this is the way it is. And either somebody is at large, or somebody is in custody, or somebody is dead. Why mention terrorism? Because everything is terrorism in the drama that we are witnessing on our television screens 24 hours a day. So that's coming out of Cincinnati, Ohio. They're not nice to hear that, no matter where it is in the world. I'm sure you'll hear more about it throughout the day. The BBC are just on it now, Sky just on it now. I'm sure more will develop as the day goes on. Listen, that was your Sunday View for Sunday, March 26th, 2017. I've been Richie Allen. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you getting up that bit earlier to take part in the programme. Thanks for your tweets as well. We'll be back with you tomorrow, Monday, at 7 p.m. BST. That's British Summertime, 7 p.m. for the first of the week's live Richie Allen show. It's got some great guests lined up for you over the course of the week. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Get out in the sunshine. Get out and spend some time in the fresh air, which is what I'm going to do right now. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Look after yourselves and one another. Bye for now.
Broadcasting the information the mainstream media won't touch. This is The Richie Allen Show in association with DavidIke.com.